All right, so you've graduated, you've got your bachelor's degree, maybe you've got a master's degree, you've gone for some post college education, and you are ready to find your dream job. So what do you do? How do you go about pursuing the job? Well, the first thing is obviously applying for the job, right? Once you find a job, apply for the job. A couple of things you want to make sure you have that most people will ask for. One is a resume, right? And so list on there also the potential things that you need to include on there. Don't include things that are extraneous to having a good resume. And you can generally Google creating a resume, or at your college, there may be a placement office that will offer you help in creating a resume for you. And again, they will help you determine what sort of things you want to have on a resume and what sort of things not to include on a resume. The other thing that goes along with the resume that serves kind of as a summary for the most applicable things off of your resume for the particular job you're applying for is a good solid cover letter. And these cover letters are tailored for the job. Don't just make a cover letter and it's generic and you use it for everything. Tailor your cover letter to the company that you are applying for and the job that you were applying for. So again, you can find a lot of good tips online about how to create a good solid cover letter, or again, the placement office at the college that you're graduating from will offer assistance for you as well. And there are all sorts of resources, but again, most of them will ask for a resume and a cover letter. And it's an opportunity. Cover letter is an opportunity to sell yourself by talking about the most important applicable things. The other thing that you want to do in a cover letter, you want to absolutely make sure you do, is write about the things that respond to the elements in the job description. In other words, focus on showing that you have the things that they're asking for in the job description. Okay, so that's really important that you are addressing those, because again, it's a one-page summary of and how you're selling yourself, maybe a page and a half in how you sell yourself in relationship to what they are looking for, and what they're looking for is in that job description. Also have a follow-up plan, right? So what we mean by this is when you send your resume, when you submit your resume and your cover letter, and a lot of people do this online. They'll have you go online and apply for a job, and it will automatically submit your resume and cover letter. But once you do that, you might wait a day and then call and confirm that they've received that material, and if there's anything else that they might want or need. So call and confirm that. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, you can ask about potential dates that they might be starting interviews, right? So when do they anticipate, when they are anticipating starting to interview people, right? And there's nothing wrong with asking that question. If the job description or posting says not to call, guess what? You shouldn't call, right? So here is a test for you, right? The company wants to know, are you going to follow directions? And if they clearly put on there, don't call us about the job or the application or the process, and you call, guess what they have determined? You can't follow directions, right? And that's never a good start. You're probably not going to get an interview. Last thing is write down every time you make contact with someone in the company. You follow up with to make sure that you have your materials. Write down who you talked to, and for your purposes, write down when that was, date and time, anytime you contact the company. If you write a letter, write that down, right, in whatever you're writing in. Sent a letter on such and such a date, and that way you can always refer back to that if you need to. Hey, I sent you. If you call and say, hey, did you get my materials? I sent that yesterday afternoon. Or I put that in the mail on Monday, and I thought you would have that by now. This way, when you are talking to people, and you can be as accurate as possible when it comes to that information. All right, so you've applied for the job. Now, what do you do in terms of planning for an interview? They call you, they say, hey, we'd like to interview you, and can you come at such and such time? So you arrange time. But what do you do in the meanwhile between that call and getting ready for the interview? So the first thing is do some research on the company. If you haven't done that already, do some research on the company. Maybe you did it, oh, here's this job, and let me find out about this company. And you may have already done that. But if you haven't yet, make sure you do some research on the company. See what you can find on the internet, and go to the company website, look at all the material they have, their mission statement, their, whatever they do, look to see who their management team is, right? So there's all sorts of things you can do to research the company. Also, as you prepare for the interview, practice interviewing. Practice interviewing. If you have someone you know that does interviewing or has interviewing skills, or again, the placement center at the college that you're graduating from may have people that are available to help you do that. But part of what you should do is plan answers to those standard interview questions. And you can Google that. What are some standard interview questions, and you'll find that most people have a standard set of interview questions. They're not all the same, but there's a good number of them that are fairly standard in any job interview. Also prepare for non-traditional questions. The book gives you some examples of some pretty funky questions, but here is where people want to see, employers want to see if they can engage creativity, and they want to see how you respond off the cuff. And so these are things you can't necessarily prepare for, right? But practice the idea of taking something that might have someone work with you and give you a very non-traditional question, and then practice responding to that. What process do you go through? Listen to the question. Okay, what are they asking? And then plan a strategy to answer that as directly as you can. Here are two particular questions that you absolutely want to be prepared for, because 99.9% of the time you're going to be asked these things. One of them is, what are your shortcomings or what are your weaknesses? Right. And you don't want to go, oh, I really suck at, and even in even more formal language, basically, oh, I suck at this or I suck at that. You want to think about how you phrase them. Right. So rather than saying, well, I'm horrible about turning in my work on time, you might say, one of the challenges that I have that I'm trying to focus on correcting is that sometimes I'm a little late in getting a project in, or I sometimes I struggle to meet the deadline. Right. And so the way you phrase that is you recognize something that's a challenge to you, but also that you mentioned that it's something that you're working on. So they get a sense that, here's someone who can recognize an issue and then have a solution for it. The other question, as I've already mentioned, that you're going to get asked is, do you have any questions for us, right? And so again, you want to make sure that you do have questions. Even though you might know the answers, ask some really intelligent questions. For example, one of the things might be, I took a look at the mission statement. I'm really impressed by the mission statement, and I'm wondering where that mission statement came from, something like that. And so, it gives them an opportunity to talk about their company, but it also shows that, most people aren't aware of whether the company has a mission statement and what that mission statement is. So that's something that would be impressive to a potential employer. Also, know facts about the company, right? So I talked about doing some research on the company earlier. Learn about their history, learn when they started, learn, the evolution of their product or products, learn their mission statement, things like that, right? Look those things up, because you can always make reference to some of those things. Also, know the law, right? And this pertains to the fact that there are questions legally that interviewers can answer, but also questions by law that are illegal to ask. Now, the book says, you might want to go ahead and answer them anyway, even though you know that they're probably illegal. I think that's a dangerous suggestion. My suggestion is, if you know that they're asking you something that's illegal for them to ask, something about, race, color, religion, gender, sexual orientation, all the other ones that are listed here on the slide, feel free to say, I'm uncomfortable at this time answering that question. And hopefully, if they're smart, they'll say, okay, fine, right? And they won't hold that against you. They shouldn't. If they ask that question and you refuse to answer, you have every right to refuse to answer that. And if you feel that affected your hiring on the job or not getting hired on the job, you can always report that to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or whoever's in charge of stuff like that. So there are exceptions to asking questions about things like your ability. Do you have any disabilities, or do you have anything that will prevent you from doing such and such? Because it might be part of the actual ability to perform the job or a task in the job. Then there are exceptions to that in law, but they can't ask it out of curiosity. So it has to be a reason for it. Um, then the other thing you want to do as part of, I have it under know the law, but it's actually a separate thing, and that is bring copies of your application materials, bring a copy of your resume, bring a copy of the cover letter, bring those sorts of things in case maybe there's other people who are in on the interview committee who may not have received the cover letter and resume, or you could have it just for reference so you know what you put on there rather than having to memorize or struggling to remember what you put on there. Okay, so those are things that you do as you plan for the interview. And if you do these things, you're more likely to have a successful interview, or definitely feel more comfortable and prepared for the interview than you might be otherwise.